Let's take the earplug out. Okay. 6 February 2024. I I've had an action-packed day so far. I saw a really good deal on some hay, right? And if you ever get any kind of extra cash and you want to spend it, and you want to spend it on something you can get your money back out of, hay is one of the things that you can get. So I'm just going to give you that helpful tidbit right there. And here's the hay that I bought. All right, and I got 10 of them because I wasn't sure what the quality of it was going to be. You know, you can't really tell. I was an older guy, and I talked to him, and he says, "Yeah, it's really good stuff. Second cutting, it'll work great for your steers." Okay, bring me 10. He says, "Yeah, okay, be there at 9 o'clock in the morning." Okay, well, maybe it'd be good, maybe it won't. But he showed up here like at 9:01, which in my book counts for something, and dropped it off. And I'll tell you something, those bales look kind of small. You can barely even rock those bales. Okay, so my front end loader here, I really don't know how much it will pick up, but it will barely pick those up, barely. And so that's what I've been doing today. I got 10 of them. I had to pick them all off, and I talked with the fella for a little bit. We had an interesting conversation, and I'm going to expound on it a little bit tonight when we get together for our live chat at 8 o'clock Eastern Standard Time. I'm going to talk a little bit about that because there's still some things that people really need to know about farming and the government, I guess. I hate to say that because it's really not the government. It's anyway, we'll go into it tonight. But then I started moving this stuff around, and I had something happen that happens all the time. Okay? I'm going to show you. So, here's my tractor, my little 55 horsepower tractor. Okay? Nothing to write home about. 1994 is when it was built, so it's kind of old. And this is the spear. So the spear, I made it, and it hooks on to this piece right here. Hooks on there. And then there's these two clips that go under the bucket. Okay? One there and one there. And I built this, at least 10 years ago, at least. And I built it in a morning. I didn't have a round baler at the time. I had just got a new round baler. Well, it's as old as I am, but it was new to me. And I was going to be making round bales again, so I needed a way to move them around. And you got to have a spear on the front of your loader to move them. So I made this. I put it on. It didn't work perfectly. Sometimes it jumps off. And so today, when I was using it, I did that. Because these little bales are so heavy. The guy said that, he sold this hay to me by the pound, right? So he says, "Well, how many bales do you want?" I said 10. He says, "Okay, I'll go weigh them up." So he loaded his trailer, went and weighed it, and then he charged me per pound on it, per ton. So basically per pound. So a load of 10 of those, I paid $650, including delivery. So each one was $65. And they got to be 1,000 pounds each. They have to be. I can barely pick them up. So we'll see. I put one out for the steers, and they're working it over. But let's see how long it lasts compared to my bales, the bales that I make, which there's 2 of them right there. All right, so I'm having to make this repair, and I thought this is something I could talk to you all about. if you're going to be in this career field, you're going to be using equipment, and if that, let's say that was one that I purchased someplace, which could very well happen. You can buy them, and I'm moving stuff around, and it breaks. Now what? Now what? Now what do you do? So I suppose you'd have to find a guy that's a welder around, and you'd have to haul it over to him, and maybe wait a day or two until he got it done, and then pay, and then bring it home. Okay, I could see that. I could see that. But I use so much stuff like that around here that it is really in my best interest to own a machine that will weld. So I'll show you the one that I have. This is a Lincoln Ranger 8, and I've had it for going on 30 years. Yeah, I've had it going on 30 years. And this one, many, many years ago, while I was still in the service is when I bought it. I wanted to have a part-time job having that welder on the back of my Ford pickup and go around and do small welding jobs at people's farms. I wanted to do that. What I found out was most people that are serious about farming, they have one of those. Maybe not like that. There are kinds that you just plug in, like 110 volts. There are kinds that are 220 that you plug in. This particular I have right here is what's called an arc welder, ARC. So you use a stick. Sometimes they call them stick welders too. You use a rod like this, a welding rod. So this rod is covered with shielding, they call it, and it's got some properties that are fluxish in nature. So when the electricity flows down this and you hold it just off what you're welding, it makes an arc, like a 1/4 inch. And it makes an extreme amount of heat, well, melts this filler rod that's in here. See, that's the filler rod. This is the end that you put in the hose clamp, or the rod clamp, or sometimes they call it, if you're a real welding guy, they'll call it the stinger. Right? They call this the stinger. All right, so here's one that I was using, and you put it in like this. See? And this is the one that came with that welder, so it's got a lot of miles on it. That welder has a Hobbs meter on it, HOBBS. And let's see, last time I checked, the Hobbs meter is reading 509 hours. So for a machine like that, that's not very much. It really isn't. I used one of those things at the power plant when I first got out of the service. I was working there as a welder. And the one that they had there was exactly the same machine. And it had 150,000 hours on it, as I remember. And it ran the same as this one. Runs fine. The only thing that's ever gone wrong with this is the battery, and I've had to replace the battery. Not bad in 30 years, having replaced the battery once, one time. And the battery that goes in this is an odd size, and you got to get it from Lincoln, the manufacturer. And I looked into it one time, it was real expensive, so I decided I'll just use a car battery. So that's what I have. I have a car battery hooked to it, and it works fine. So once you, here's my point. Here's my point. Once you have this, once you have a piece of equipment like this, you're more likely to say to yourself, oh, well, if I had a welder, I could build I could build this, or I could build this. Here's something that I built the other day. I'll show you. I actually did this. This is when we're doing fence posts and we have a hole, we drop the fence post in, and this is what we pack the hole with, right? So around here, this is affectionately called the fudge packer, right? And my kids don't even know why I call it a fudge packer. I'm just kidding. But on the other end, no, they don't know why I call it that. On the other end, I cut a piece of steel and then I welded it on. Right here, you can see the weld that I made on it. And then there was a couple of cuts in the steel across here, and I welded those closed. And then I used my 4-inch grinder, which you got to have one of these. That's a 4-inch grinder. You can see my cutting wheel is kind of cut down on it because I've been using it. But I used... Okay, I must be in a bad spot right there. I was leaning it up against the antifreeze thing, and it kicked off. So anyway, when it's really cold in the winter, I'm able to go down there with that bar and chop the ice, and then the cows can get in there and get their water. So I made one, and I liked it so much that I made another one. So now I have 2 of them. One of them will stay in the fencing trailer. The other one will just stay in here. Because you always have things that you need to do with a bar, like if you want to move something, or if you're digging and there's a rock and you got to get around it, you use them. We use them quite a bit. So I made 2. The point is, if you buy a tool, you will use it for the time that you need it, and then you will use it again, and then you will use it again. And I have found that a welding machine doesn't have to be a self-contained one like this. This is got a gasoline engine on it, 2-cylinder engine, and then the generator is up here. They make them that you just plug them in, that are not necessarily stick welders. They have what's called MIG welders, MIG. It stands for metal inert gas. And the technology on those has really come around. And for, I don't know, better part of $1,000, you can get a really good MIG welder, 220 volts, that will weld anything that you want, even aluminum, although I don't weld aluminum. But mostly steel is what you'd be welding. You don't weld things like brass and copper. You don't do those, or at least I don't. They don't know of that. But that's a good way to go too. And this type of welding, arc welding, is harder than MIG welding for sure. It takes more practice to get a good looking weld and a good penetration on the weld to where it's going to hold. But it's definitely a skill. Like if you want to skill up for your homestead, that is a skill that you should probably look at first and foremost, because we do use equipment a lot. We use tools a lot, and a lot of the tools that we use are made out of steel. Another thing is I'm big on scrounging. So real quick, let me just show you. I can find something really easy. Really easy. This was a stand of some sort that somebody built, and I found it, and it was just sitting alongside the road. Somebody wanted to get rid of it, and it was heavy enough that I really had to grunt to get it in the back of my truck. But look at that steel. You know, this steel has only been used one time, and somebody was going to toss it. And then it had these pieces on the end, right? This is what they call a channel. And so I was able to scrounge that. I didn't pay anything for it. And it sat around here for 10 years, at least 10 years. And at one point I thought, I wonder if I'm ever going to do anything with that. So I wound up cutting it up, separating it. There's some more of it right there. And don't know if you can see it, but you see that rail there. That's where butchering. If you could see, as well as I can see from here, on the ends of that rail, oh yeah, a little shaky, but you can see it. On the ends, you see that orange steel? On both ends of the rail. Take my word for it, it's there. Is steel from this thing that I scrounged, this stand. So the long and short of it is, to build that, I built it all out of stuff that I scrounged over the years. And same thing with this bale spear. The only part on there that isn't scrounged is the spear itself. Everything else is just stuff that's been laying around, or I don't remember what it exactly came from. But when you get into welding, you're going to need a few other things too. So let me just run through them real quick, and then we can call it a day. This is a 4-inch grinder. Everybody makes those things. This one's a Milwaukee. It works good. The only thing I don't like about it is where the button is, because you constantly are accidentally shutting it off. And then you can get various wheels to go on it, or discs. This one is a 5/8 arbor, they call it. This part right here is where the arbor is is where it bolts on. All right. And I got a bunch of those. I kind of collect them. I got a whole bunch of them. They call them abrasives. And then another thing that would be really helpful to have would be one of these. They call it a cutoff, and it's got an abrasive wheel on it, and you can cut steel with it. All right? This is about the third one that I've owned. And then another thing that is helpful to have is this, is a bench grinder. This one I've had since I was in the service, so I've had it probably like 30 years, 30, 40 years. 6-inch bench grinder. And then I built that stand for it, so you can move it around. It's heavy enough. That's an old 1-ton wheel. And then a gear, and then just a chunk of pipe. It's a good little welding project. This plate right here, I wonder if that looks familiar to anybody. That's from the railroad. That's what the railroad, the rails sit on, and then the spikes go down through these holes right here. And then another good thing that you'll need on your homestead workshop is, this is a pretty cheap bench press, or drill press. It's pretty cheap. It's a Harbor Freight, but we've had it for a long time. And the amount of use that it gets is not that much. And if it ever failed, it would be out the door, and I would get the next biggest one up, right? And it's got this little vise that goes with it. So when you need to drill something on there, you can clamp it in. And then we have a bunch of bits like this. These are not supposed to be laying out like this, but the last guy that was using it, Jim, didn't put them back. Another good thing that goes with the shop is someplace to put your tools. So this is a tool chest that I've had for like 10 years. This came from, Home Depot. And, I can keep all my stuff in there. It's good. It's good to have that. You can stay organized. Another thing that goes good with the metal fabrication world is a set of torches for cutting. All right, so this is oxygen and acetylene. There is a better way now, though, and I might look at that if I were going to do this over again, and that is what they call a plasma cutter. And it's a machine that creates an arc, the same as this, but then it has a jet of compressed air that blows any molten steel. It blows it out. So they cut nice straight lines. I haven't used them very much, not much, a little bit, but I've never done any heavy stuff with them. This machine, the oxygen acetylene tanks, will cut some really thick stuff, and I'm just used to it, so I like them. I'm not going to change anything. I like using oxygen acetylene. And then you can use it for other stuff if you want to heat something up, or you need to, if you got a bolt that's stuck, and then you can just use the cutting head to just blow it off. It's very nice to have. All right, see you tonight. Anyone can farm.